live on the internet. Hello, my friend Jay. How are you?
Hey, great, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching us live from. Welcome to this live stream. This is the Pragmatic AI, specifically with .NET show, where every other Thursday we just get on and we talk about things that are real. There's a lot of things changing with AI and how we build software, but we just want to get to what's real. How are we really shipping software with AI? So that's what we'll talk about today. I'm your host, Sam Basu, and my good friend Jay is here. Jay, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so Sam and I have known each other for many years. We both speak at a lot of the same events. We're both Microsoft MVPs. So we actually just saw each other last week at the Microsoft MVP Summit. And I think that's all we're allowed to say about that, right? The NDA, Sam.
Yeah.
Um, but I have a software engineering background. I got a computer science degree longer ago than I want to admit. And then about 10 years ago, started Trailhead Technology Partners. We do custom software consulting. So we help our clients build custom software applications. As you can imagine, that has changed a lot in these last several months as AI has actually gotten very useful in that process. So I imagine we're going to talk about that more today.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no, Jay is awesome. Like you said, like I've known him for many, many years, and we speak and we have and hang out with the same group of old friends now, older people who have been doing software for quite some time. Yeah, we have seen the changes, and this one's particularly big. And this all of this is yes, AI has been around for quite some time, but do you feel, Jay, like this is like a kind of a big shift in the last 1 year in particular?
Yeah, and maybe even less than that.
Hmm.
I remember when ChatGPT first appeared on the scene in November of what year was that? A couple of years ago.
23-ish.
Yeah, November of 23, I believe. And I had friends who are not software developers, say, "Hey, look, I told it create me a mobile app, and it created a mobile app." And I looked at the mobile app and was like, "Yeah, this is a totally useless like shell of a mobile app that doesn't even compile." Like, okay, I'm not worried about this. But from there to I would say around December of last year, 2025, and coming into January of this year, the the last major step that we've experienced happened with, I would say, Opus 4.5 coming out, where all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, this can do whole swaths of work that it was not able to do successfully before, and it started making a lot of people think really differently about how to use it.
Yeah, well said. And there are lots of choices now in how we use agentic workflows and which AI models we are using. I mean, the sonnets and the GPTs of the world, but we have been talking a lot about the Opus moment where it's gotten really good. Again, it needs guardrails, but do you find that the code that it generates nowadays is at par with what you would write?
Yeah. I mean, in some cases it's ahead of what I would write, and in some cases it's behind what I would write. And it totally depends on the situation, the way I'm using it, the way I prompt it, the skills that I give it, right? Like all of those caveats very much apply right now. So, as with a lot of cutting edge technologies, I think there's probably more ways to do it poorly than there are ways to do it well. Like the guardrails of the process aren't really there yet because nobody's got the years of experience with this yet, right? Nobody's been doing this for very long, so we all are kind of figuring it out as we go along. But yes, when it's an ideal situation and when I put up the right guardrails in my prompts and skills, then yes, the code that it produces is 10 or 20 times as fast as me and is just as good or better than what I would have produced if I had done it myself.
Yeah. So I think like what you said, like you have to guide it the right way.
Yeah.
And again, the conditions need to be right, like the guardrails, like whatever it is that you're using, skills and instructions and sub agents, all of those things need to be in place. And if you do have all of that, it's not even fair just how fast it can generate code and how fast it can grok through big code bases.
Yeah.
It's a very different world. Do you miss, like, I don't know how many of us are hand coding UI these days,
Right.
or functions,
Yeah.
but do you miss like the craftsmanship aspect of doing things entirely by hand?
That's a really interesting question. I had some conversations last week when we were both together with a bunch of different MVPs, and I had the same conversation several times, which is interesting. Where basically it was proposed to me that there's a spectrum of software engineers going from one end where they just like solving problems in the real world to the other end where they like the technology kind of from a more, I don't know what you want to call it, like a engineer perspective, like they like the technology for its own sake. I've always fallen more on the I like solving problems. I think when I first fell in love with development, it was on a Apple II way back in the day, and I was learning BASIC, and I was like, "Oh wait, I can make the computer do whatever I tell it to do." Like all of a sudden, my brain exploded. I was like, "There's infinite possibilities here of what I could do." Of course, video games was the first thing I thought of at that age, but I've always kind of fallen more on that end of the spectrum, and so for me, I don't miss it because I'm able to produce solutions so much faster than I used to.
Hmm.
But I totally get it. People who are like, just leave me alone and let me like think deep thoughts about the best way to do this in the code and architect this. And I had a phase of my career where I enjoyed doing that, but starting a company 10 years ago, haven't I have so many hats I have to wear. I haven't been able to do that a lot in recent years, and so this to me feels like a great thing. But I certainly understand people who don't enjoy the change.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like some people might have their hands a little bit tied based on where you're working, like if it's very sensitive, like military or
Sure.
government work.
Yeah.
But I feel like even that might be a losing battle if it just comes to code generation. That part
Mhm.
has gotten so easy that
Yes.
we should step up to providing solutions, because what AI cannot do is
Yes.
talk to real people, stitch multiple systems together, like architect a solution, like you were saying.
Right. Yeah, the AI doesn't know what to build, and so figuring out what to build and why it's the best approach.
Yeah.
Even like how it should be all stitched together, like you said, all of those things. Those are probably. I mean, I don't want to go out on a limb here and try and predict the future, but I suspect those are probably always human skills that
Hmm.
surpass
Yeah. Yeah.
computers.
Okay, so let's step back here for a second. Like, we hear a lot of the hype. There is a lot of tooling. There's a lot of agents. There are lots of ways in which people are working. I
Mhm.
love the fact that, for the nerds amongst us, like, we are back in the terminal doing so much powerful things from the terminal. But again, that might not be for everyone. Your IDEs are perfectly fine. So, what's your setup like? How do you build things these days? What's your choice of stack?
Yeah. I like to try everything because I mean not everything, right? There's a new AI tool every 5 minutes that rolls out. But I like to try all the major things that people are talking about and seem like they have some realistic usefulness to them. So the reason I do that is the same reason I think I probably enjoy engineering, which is I like to see what works and what doesn't work and figure out more efficient processes. And so what I've kind of landed on most recently is that, this might be a controversial statement, but I think you were in a session with me where a well-known person at Microsoft was talking about the terminal interfaces for AIs, and they thought that maybe they were a bug compared to the GUIs. I I've tried all of them, and for sure, when you're talking about like Claude Code, the new features come out in the terminal first, and so
Mhm.
that might also make you lean towards like, oh, the terminal is therefore better. Certainly, if you're trying to automate things, CLIs are better. But for me, uh, I like the GUI, and so Claude is kind of my favorite set of tooling right now. Claude Code specifically, and the Claude models. seem to be the strongest at the moment, although that is always changing. So I'm sure others will surpass at some point, but I like to use Claude in Visual Studio Code is probably my favorite
Okay.
place to use it.
Hmm. So when you say GUI, you're not talking about like Claude Desktop. You're actually bringing Claude into whichever ID that you're on.
That's right. Yep. And it depends on what kind of development you're doing, what kind of a IDE or editor you want. But I feel like nowadays VS Code is kind of more my default choice.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I find myself in Visual Studio or JetBrains or something else, but I'd say
Yeah.
VS Code is my default.
Yeah, mine too. Because I mean, compared to a fuller IDE, which again does a lot of things, but VS Code can just move a little bit faster because they are more from the editor.
It is definitely more lightweight, but also like because of the extensions model, it's not
Hmm.
necessarily less powerful
Right.
than Visual Studio. I mean, maybe slightly, but it's getting less and less all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Okay. So with those choice of tools, like, can we see some things that you folks are building, shipping, or some things
Yeah,
that you are experimenting with?
yeah. So I can go kind of a couple different ways. We kind of break AI down right now in a couple different categories here at Trailhead, and we think of them as being AI assisted development. So that's a lot of what you and I have just been talking about. And then we also think about AI smart features. So this is when you use AI within your software to add some smart feature to the software that wasn't
Oh, I see. So the
capable
second
before.
second thing is more about user experiences that can be better with AI.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So AI powered features in an application. So I can talk about either of those or both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's do both. So I see you're sharing your screen. So let me
Yeah.
know
Okay.
if it's okay to bring it up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, there you are. Oh,
So we,
Beer City
we
Code. I love this.
gotta do a shameless plug here. So,
Yeah.
actually, this is, as you know, Sam, a conference that I have helped run here for in Grand Rapids, where I live for I don't know, over 15 years at this point. And we've got our next event coming up in August, and I've been using AI to totally clean up our backlog, including this kind of unique sticky problem that we've had at Beer City Code. So we use a sponsorship model where our sponsors get to come and they have booths and they can use some of their sponsorship points towards giving out raffle tickets. Those raffle tickets help kind of encourage attendees. Engineers aren't always the most social naturally. So that encourages the engineers to go talk to them at the tables, get those raffle tickets for great prizes later in the event. And then we also have an email list of our attendees. Now, we obviously have that email list as kind of an opt in email list. And so the way that what's the upside to get an engineer to opt in to being uh, emailed by sponsors? Well, free technology stuff. So we basically make the raffle dependent on you being both opted in and having gone and got those raffle tickets from the sponsors. So it's kind of double benefit to the sponsors, and then the attendees get something out of it as well. So in the past, we've used spreadsheets, and it's been a very manual process. And at the event, a lot of people realize for the first time that they don't know if they're eligible or not because maybe their
Mhm.
boss or an admin or somebody signed them up for the event and bought the tickets in bulk. So they have no idea if they're opted in. Often the answer is no, they're not because their boss sees no upside in opting them in to the email list, right? Um, and so it doesn't check the checkbox that says opt in to be eligible for the raffle. So usually at the event, a lot of people are wanting to change their opt in status, and we started out handling that manually, like come tell us and we'll update it, and that was a nightmare. And then we've kind of slightly automated it where we created forms where people could fill out, and then we had to merge that data. Like 80% of the people that were filling out that form were just not sure what their status
Mhm.
was, so they were like re-opting in. And so there's a lot of like extra work going into that, and I was like, this feels like the year with AI that I can actually create a system that just does this for me automatically. And maybe in the past it would have been 40 or 60 hours of work, and it didn't feel worth it to save a couple hours every event, every year. But now I thought, boy, if I can get this down to 3 or 4 hours of work, then it's totally worth saving a couple hours every year. So that was kind of the background of this. I'm working on a blog that's going to come out pretty soon in a week or so about this process and how I did it. But I give you a little preview of it today if you're
Yeah,
interested.
I love it. And while you're doing that, by the way, again, a big shout out for Beer City Code. I've
Oh,
known the
thanks.
event for many, many years. I think I've been there quite a few times as well.
Yes,
Love the
that's right.
venue, and loved what you folks have put together for the Grand Rapids region. So
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to being there this year. I'm on.
Yes,
So yeah,
we've got some good speakers this year, so we're very excited about that.
yeah,
So I thought maybe I could start by showing you what I built,
sure.
and then we can kind of go back to how. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So we'll start out here, but I'll just show you the application. So this is kind of the main entry point for the application. So it's just a subdomain on our our domain, and I didn't want to make it complicated with login. I didn't want to have like some additional credentials that people had to create or whatever. So what I did instead was I basically said on this page, just put in your email address you use to register and then the order number. And this comes from something that everyone should have, which
yeah,
is this email that everybody gets when they sign up. Even if someone else signed them up, they would have put in their email address and they would get this email that would basically say, hey, you have a ticket. Congratulations. The ticket is attached down here. That tells you what you got. And then you've got your order number. And obviously, your own email address. So I thought, okay, that's enough to kind of verify so that if I put this in a blog post and demo it to Sam on the internet, that people aren't going to be hacking into this and changing people's registrations. So this is one here, which of course I'll delete right after this demo that I just created for the sample, but I'm going to look up this registration. And I created this as Azure Functions. So this saves the conference a bunch of money because it's only on demand. It also means you saw like a couple second delay there. It's because it went to sleep since I used it last couple hours ago. And so I had to wake back up. Obviously, during the conference, it'll probably be running pretty consistently. So this looks up the actual Eventbrite information. So we use Eventbrite for our ticketing. So that synchronizes into this application on a timed basis, and I can also force it to synchronize. And basically looks up that information and finds the order. Now, what's interesting about this is in some kind of rare cases, we'll have one person with one email address that has multiple entries in our
mm,
registrations. And that's because maybe they're in a weird edge case where they're like an organizer, but they want to attend a workshop, or something like that. And so I actually told this that can happen and said, basically, this is how I want you to handle it. If it's an organizer, but they also signed up for a workshop, they're not eligible because organizers shouldn't be eligible for the raffle because they help create it. And it could be appearances of favoritism or whatever. So um, this is actually looking up the order number that I put in, but it's also looking at this email address to see if there's any other orders that match that have different ticket types. And then you'll see those ticket types kind of common to limited right here if there are multiple.
mhm.
And then you get kind of your ticket type is eligible. So for me, I'm just a conference attendee here. So yes, I'm eligible, but I'm not opted in. So when I signed up, I did not check the box that said to opt in to sponsor emails in the raffle. So my, kind of final result here is that I'm not raffle raffle eligible at the moment. So all I have to do is click opt in, and this immediately changes the record. And now you can see that it says I'm eligible. So even if I came back and here I can do this real quick and just log in a second time. And now when I, come back and check, it's going to say that I'm raffle eligible.
Yeah, nice, nice.
So this is great, but I thought, hey, if I'm going to go through the trouble of doing that, I might as well create an administrative interface where I can do some additional stuff.
Can
So
I ask a question
yeah,
on the
please.
last one?
Yeah.
What's the UI written in?
Great question. Yeah, so the front end here is in React.
Ah,
Um,
nice. And you mentioned like Azure Functions is doing like a lookup behind the scenes, and that's hosted in the cloud.
yep, yep, and it's using authentication tokens, and and everything, so that it's only if you validate this combination on the back end do you get a valid token, and then you can interact with the other APIs. So all secure and everything.
Yes.
Stuff that if I didn't know to prompt it to do, if I didn't know enough about software development to know to prompt it to do, it might have done or it might have not done. Um,
Yeah.
so that's those guardrails we were talking about, right?
Yeah. So, and again, like this kind of brings up like the fact that you have the experience, you know where what guardrails are needed, what to prompt for.
Yes.
So yeah, and this is where maybe we all have to have more grace for people who are maybe just coming into the industry and they're
Mhm.
learning what's authentication, what are
Yeah.
tokens, like how do I do this, rather than just AI spinning it up for
Sure.
you.
Yeah, I feel really sorry, really, for people coming into the industry right now. First of all, there's been a lot of under the umbrella of AI. There's been a lot of layoffs. I think
Yeah.
AI has been the excuse that
Mm-hmm.
has been given to the markets to make it a
Yeah.
good thing that these layoffs were happening. But um, in a lot of cases, these layoffs are just kind of an opportunity for these companies to kind of cut the fat or whatever. In a lot
Yeah.
of cases, much more than the fat. But they the people coming in now are competing with all of those experienced people, and they're coming into an environment where experience in the industry is the only thing that makes you valuable because entry level stuff is being automated. It's a tough environment to be an
Yeah.
entry level programmer right now.
Yeah. I mean, we're all evolving. We'll see how the
Yes.
years shape up. Yeah.
So Mark Rusinovich, the CTO at Azure and Microsoft, and Scott Hanselman, who a lot of
I
people will
heard.
know,
Mm-hmm.
wrote a wrote a paper for a can't remember which publication it was for. It was one of the computer science publications, and basically talking about like how do we solve this problem for young people. So if you're interested, I would Google that for sure. That's a interesting topic, and they've proposed kind of a mentorship program, which I think is it's necessary to think about at this point
Yeah.
for people starting out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shall I show you the admin interface here too?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So obviously, especially if I'm going to demo the admin interface, I have to have a login for it, right? So I've got a secret here that I need to provide to log in. And I mentioned that the Eventbrite sync is happening on schedule. I can also force it here. If I say I want to force it, I've got a couple options. So I can kind of do an incremental sync, which is what's happening automatically on a schedule. You can see it says every 15 minutes that happens anyway. Or I can do this full one, which I'm not going to click on because that wipes everything out and starts over from scratch. So that would be like between uh, events, from
Mm-hmm.
this year's event to next year's event. I might do that. I can also download the CSV. So this is basically at the end. Got to send the list of opted in people to the sponsors, and this is a place I can do that. Saves me having to write a little query and create a spreadsheet. Like it's all just going to happen for me automatically. You might have seen on the other UI it said, "Hey, you have to if you want to opt in, you have to do it by a certain deadline." That's
Mm-hmm.
because the drawing happened shortly after that, so we need to like have some sort of a timeout, and that is configurable here. I also mentioned there's some ticket types that are ineligible, so we've got that configurable here in case we add ticket types in the future or something. And then the last one, which I think is kind of fun, you notice this sample attendee here. I've got a drawing which does some fuzzy matching. So, you take the name Christina, for example, which could be spelled, I think, 8 different ways or something. It's when somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I won the raffle. Am I eligible?" We don't want to be like, "How do you spell your name? Is it K? Is it C? Whatever." Um, and so it's doing some fuzzy matching here. But for sample attendee, I should only find the one. And sure enough, I do. And you can see that we can tell like instantly that this person is eligible, and we can say, "Hey, congratulations, you actually won." So this will be an opportunity to make it quicker to do that double check during the drawing.
Mm. Is the if I may ask a question, like how is the fuzzy matching working? Like, is it like a semantic search type thing?
It's not only because if I did a semantic search, then I would have also had to add a vector database, which is
Mm.
fine. Wouldn't have been a huge overhead, but it would have definitely been extra effort. And I wanted to keep it really simple. So there's this, I forget what it's called exactly. It's called like Levenstein distance algorithm or something like that. Yeah.
Ah,
So this looks really technical, but what it basically does is it counts the changes that would have to happen between one word and another word.
hmm,
And each change, which a change is like a letter being swapped out for another letter, a letter being added, a letter being removed, like those are all counted as changes. Those kind of all add up to points. And then there's a fairly quick implementation of this that can run against large chunks of data and give you basically like a what's the quote unquote distance between uh, between two words. So I'm using that just because it's sort of a
interesting.
low
Yeah.
effort, low maintenance way to
I
do it.
had not heard about that. I mean, it's the kind of the core idea of semantic search, anyways. Like you're trying to find the distance, vector distance.
Yeah, and a semantic search would be great for a situation where you were trying to match concepts to each other that weren't spelled the same, like
Right,
say dog and pet, right? Like those are very conceptually similar, but they're not spelled at all the same.
right,
Um, but in this case, we're searching names, and so it was more about just like spelling
right.
differences rather
Hmm.
than conceptual similarity.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you built all of this by hand
Yep.
or with AI?
With AI. And so I went back afterwards and kind of did the math for my blog that I told you I'm writing about this process. And I estimated that on a good day, this would have taken me maybe 40 to 60 hours of effort
Yeah.
to put together. Now I'm not a expert in all of the technologies that I use. I would say I'm a mediocre minus front end developer these days. So the React part probably would have taken me the most time, and the back end would have taken me the least time. Uh, but because of AI, I basically didn't have to worry about that. Right? I could just say, these are the tools I want you to use. This is the technology stack I want you to use, and this is how the features should work. And I was able to build this in probably about 4 hours.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And this is done inside of Visual Studio Code with the Cloud Code, plugin.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So here is the actual project, and
Nice.
here is the actual, or at least the most recent ending. Is this the right one? Nope. Sorry, this is the right one. Here is the chat that I had with it about uh, about what I wanted to build. However, I actually started before this just using Claude, so I can show you that even more.
Hmm.
Um, so this is just me starting out, like stream of consciousness. What am I trying to do here? What's the background? So this is what I explained to everybody at the beginning. Like, what's the situation? It's a sponsors with booths and raffle tickets and eligibility. Problem, not everyone registers themselves, so people often don't know if they're opted in, right? Technical specs. So I'm saying here, I want a React front end. I want it to be Azure, stored on Azure Blob Storage. I changed this to say more specifically Azure's static web apps,
Hmm.
um, because when I said this, it actually did exactly what I said, and I was like, wait, I didn't actually, the static web apps is like a conglomerate resource that works better for hosting than Azure Blob Storage and CDN together. So had to clarify that later. And then here's like the requirements. And then I basically told it to like ask me questions and don't just make assumptions, but like ask me questions and help me build the detailed specs.
Nice. So you're essentially kind of in like a plan mode where you're
Yep,
wanting it to ask you more questions as you go along.
that's right. And so you can see there's like quite a back and forth here where it's asking me questions and I'm answering those questions, and it's providing suggestions and all this stuff going through. It's actually trying connections to endpoints. I've changed all of the secrets, by the way, since this time because for obvious reasons I'm going to blog about this. um, Here even is an interesting thing where it basically said, hey, I found these are all of your ticket types, and I think these ones should be ineligible and these ones should be eligible. And I was like, No, actually, these ones are
Oh.
eligible, and
Wait,
so
so can I ask a question? Like, how does it know all of your ticket types? Like, is it connected through, like, are you giving it even bright access?
yes, yep.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because one of the features, so this is kind of an interesting hack that your viewers might find interesting. If you're going to connect to, especially a third-party API, you could go read about it, or you could point the AI at the documentation, or you could basically and have it build the code off of that, or you could have it try sample calls and see what comes back from the calls, right? Maybe the
Mm,
documentation isn't 100% accurate, or maybe there's something buried in there that it doesn't understand the nuances of. When it So what I basically did was I told it, "Hey, I signed up for this, API token. Go ahead and use it to make this call to Eventbrite and see what you get back." And it did that and said, "Okay, I found all of these." Um, so yeah, you can see here it
interesting.
found like my event ID, found sample order ID, all kinds of stuff in there that it found.
Yeah, and when you are integrating with like other systems like this, like, do you check if they have extra AI tooling? Like, does Eventbrite, like, I don't even know, like, do they have like MCP tools that you
Yeah.
can plug away?
Yeah, so, like, I know your employer, Uno, does have that. Unfortunately, I feel like that's a bit of a that puts you guys on a bit of the cutting edge to
Mhm.
be doing that at the moment. So, what I've run into is that a lot of places aren't providing that information yet. Now you can find some third-party things, but, like, if they're on GitHub, like, are they up to date? And in this case, I was gonna basically be making one call to one API on Eventbrite, and I thought, "Huh, is it really worth all that effort, or should I
Yeah,
just have it try calling it once and see what
yeah,
happens and get the data back and say, okay, I see how this works."
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And at
Yeah.
any point, do you point it to any docs, like, here's the best practices for React, or it can figure it out all on its own?
It can figure it out somewhat, but if you want it to be even better, so like at Trailhead, we have our own frameworks that
Hmm.
we use as starting points for different types of projects, React and .NET and Angular and all the like different backends and front ends and stuff. And I didn't do it in this case because this is not technically a Trailhead project, but we have on our other projects basically used skills that we've created to say like this is how the Trailhead framework works. This is where you can find the code for it.
Oh, nice.
And so we can actually say like these are the patterns that we prefer. Never do this, always do that, and that's been super powerful and useful. In this case, I skipped that step basically because it was kind of a
Yeah,
standalone thing.
right.
Yeah. And so what's kind of fun about this, actually, even since you're asking about like MCP servers and skills and things like that, is at the end of this, I did have, so we already have an Azure DevOps set up for this organization. Um, so let me switch over to that a second. And so I set up a MCP server that connects to Azure DevOps and said use the MCP server to create epics, features, and user stories. So this was after the whole conversation where it and I kind of collaboratively came up with all the specifications. And you can see
Mm,
here it created at least a few epics and it created quite a few features. And then for most features, it created a single user story. And if we actually look at these user stories, you can see quite a bit of stuff here. So maybe this one's not the most interesting because it's the Terraform one, but let me look at like, let me look at the fuzzy name search one because we were just talking about that. So in here, it's basically saying how all of the search stuff should work and how it should look at the ticket type and how if somebody has multiple ticket types, it should look at all of them, and that if any of them disqualifies the person, then the person is disqualified. And here's that Levenstein algorithm, and the fuzzy sharp library is where that comes from on NuGet.
mm,
So that was kind of when I said, "Hey, you should use a fuzzy search algorithm." It said, "Here's some options," and I had done a talk about this before, so I remembered this one. It was like, "Oh yeah, that one's perfect. It's offline. It doesn't require any additional tools or resources." And so like, yeah, go ahead and use that one.
Nice.
And so,
So this is actually pretty detailed based on that spec, the conversation. Like it's creating, like this is Claude creating all of the epics and the features.
yeah, yep.
Wow.
From our conversation though, right? So arguably, like it typed all of this. Arguably, it comes from the information that it and I provided it from our conversation.
Yeah, this is very detailed. Like, and just think about like if you were to do this by hand, like
Yeah.
writing all of this out, that's a lot of work.
I know, right? If you were going to type all these in, just the names and organizing them with the parent-child relationships and typing in all the acceptance criteria, this is 4 hours of work right here, at least,
Right.
right? And
Wow.
this,
Yeah.
honestly, like after the conversation, to actually create all of these from the conversation took a few minutes, a couple minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
So
It's amazing.
pretty amazing. Now, of course, if this was a real system, I would go read these things super carefully and be like, no, I want to change this. Um, But instead, for this demo where I basically spent just a few minutes skimming all of them to make sure that there wasn't anything glaringly wrong, but there wasn't really anything glaringly wrong. It was pretty close to the conversation that we had.
Nice. So, like based on the conversation, like Claude creates a spec essentially of
Yeah,
here's what I'm about to build, and based on that, it goes off and writes out the features and the epics in your
yep.
DevOps.
Yeah, that's right.
And is all of that like before you start the actual project?
That's right. That all of that was before I popped over into VS Code, and then once that was all the way I wanted it in Azure DevOps, and I had reviewed it all, then I did pop over into VS Code and used the Cloud Code plugin here, and started basically saying, "Hey, Cloud Code, uh, we've already talked about these requirements, and they're all on Azure DevOps. Use your MCP server to connect to it, and let's go feature by feature and
Oh,
develop it
nice.
together." Hmm.
So it's actually reading all of the features and then writing out the
Yeah.
code
Yes,
that support each
unfortunately,
one.
I lost a little of that history. You can see here at some point it compacted the conversation,
Yeah,
and
that's a
so
long context window.
yeah, my conversation was very long at the end, and so it's not surprising that it compacted it at some point. But yes, very right at the beginning of the process, I basically said all of that what I just told you. Hey, go connect to the MCP server and use what it's got there to start programming things. Now, I could have pointed it at it and said just like keep going until you're done. But I said, let's do it one feature at a time. And so that way, basically, it would do a feature and then say, okay, have a look at that, right? Because that's a lot less code for me to
Hmm.
review
Hmm.
than doing how many features did I have here, uh, however many features this is, 10 or something. That's a lot of features to, I'm sorry, user stories to have it implement
Yeah.
and have me have to basically review 100% of the application all at once. So I did it feature by feature, and there were a few things I bumped it in a different direction. Like, oh, hey, I noticed you're doing this. And then what's really cool is I did have this Terraform task in there as well. So I basically said, hey, when I'm done with this, I want to be able to just release this to Azure using Terraform. And I'm not a Terraform expert, so this saved me a ton of time from trying to kind of like read the documentation and remember how to write all of the Terraform stuff. And it basically just wrote it for me. And as you can see here, it even created the pipelines for me. So I've got a back end and a front end pipeline.
Nice.
So now when I make changes, they just commit automatically and update the back end or front end in Azure for me.
This is sweet. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
like you're going essentially from concept, just, you know, typing it out, your
Yeah.
ideas to spec, to features, to user stories,
Yeah.
to actual implementation, and then CI/CD pipeline.
Yes. I typed this line right here at the beginning of the whole process. So like, hey, I would like your help building a utility for the conference that I run. That's the
Yeah.
idea, right? I typed that, and 4 hours later, I had gone through all of those hoops. I had a front end and a back end built with modern technology that were deployed and working, and using Terraform and pipelines and all that stuff in 4 hours. Pretty amazing.
Love it. Look at the times we're living in. This is amazing. To
Yes.
just to see your setup of how like a professional person will go from idea to actually fully working
Yeah.
implementation. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And I would think this is something that other conferences would also have a need for in some way or the other. So
Sure.
maybe there's a use case here for white labeling it, and
Yeah. Yeah, you can imagine, I could just probably come here as soon as we're done with this call. I could come here into Cloud Code and say, "Hey, my friend Sam had the idea to white label this application and make it usable for other conferences. Like, what changes do I need to make to the application to make that possible?" And it would probably create a pretty solid list of suggestions. Like, "Hey, you should probably add these things to the configuration. You need to make the logo and the name of the event changeable. You need a maybe
yeah,
some instructions.md for people to like set up DNS or whatever." So
yeah.
pretty powerful.
It is. Now, I am very curious because, like, you have VS Code open.
Yeah.
Can you show us your extensions, like your favorite ones that you
Oh,
cannot live without? And do you use like different profiles for different types of work?
I should tell you that I basically am running a simplified version of it for this demo, so I don't have all of my normal stuff installed in here for the purposes of basically keeping things secret for all the screenshots in my blog. I have a separate install of Visual Studio Code that I'm using. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you that I am moving from extensions and MCP servers. Like a lot of people, I'm moving more to skills. uh, I think skills are really interesting. It doesn't seem like they should make any difference, but they really do. Really make a difference in how good your LLM is at doing different types of tasks. I can't tell you how many times I've told my LLM to stop using M dashes when it writes, non-technical content, and because what's more giveaway that wrote something with AI than an M dash in it, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as I wrote a skill that is, I think I called it like JTower voice.md or something like that. And it describes itself as basically being my writing style. And
Mm,
Claude and I put it together by just basically parsing a bunch of blogs and other content that I wrote before AI and coming up with like, what is my voice? And basically wrote this skill for itself to say, do these things, don't do these things. I added a few things to it, like don't use M dash as another, giveaway, AI giveaway when you're writing. And man, just having that skill in Claude has really changed the writing that it does in there. It's pretty amazing.
mm. Yeah, that's amazing because you're essentially capturing like your voice, like and how you want certain
Yeah.
things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you can see even right here, it loves the M dash.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question because this is something like internally we are having conversations with, like skills, like you said, are very useful. But like, what's the balancing act where, like, how much should you put in skills? Like, should you put code or should you point to the docs? Are you
Mm.
signing up for yet another thing to maintain as your docs evolve?
Yeah, that's great. We're trying to figure this out at Trailhead right now a little bit because, you know, this stuff is evolving so quickly. People are coming up with skills on the team every day that are useful to them personally,
Hmm.
and then one of the hard things about a company is always you can't you can't try and make a company run on heroes like individual heroes.
Yeah.
uh, you need to systematize things. And when you think about like somebody creating a skill that's like, oh wow, that really changes the results and makes my life a lot easier. But if they don't have a process where they can then share that and other people can use it, in fact, not just can use it, but like other people are sort of forced to use it because it's part of the official process. So we're figuring all that stuff out right now because yeah, because those skills are kind of the state of the art right now. And so trying to make sure that everybody has a place to share those. And we don't have it figured out totally yet, but
Yeah.
we're exploring different options.
Yeah. And I think as are many people in this space,
Hmm.
like we're all trying to figure out the most optimized way of
Yes.
having a shared workflow that everyone can feel productive in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's this great one for
Hmm.
.NET developers that I learned about this week. This one right here. So this is kind of the .NET team at Microsoft's solution to sharing is that they share them publicly. So when people come up with a cool thing, they they put it in this repository,
Yeah.
and you can go check it out. So if you want to get better at .NET MAUI, for example, you can look at all the skills here that people have come up with. Uh, so here's the Maui doctor. Now, do you guys have something like this for Uno too?
Yes. They're not fully public yet, and we're trying to
Okay.
figure out, how best to share. But
Mhm.
we use it all over the place internally. It's just a matter of trying to package it up the right way. Yes, so similar conversations, like because we also do have MCPs, and the balancing act is not try to overburden the agent with too many things in the skill. So how
Right.
many skills can we, like, how granular do we want it when you're building a Maui or platform app? Like, do you need 5 skills, or can you make do with one big one? So that
Right.
the kind of conversations we're having.
Those are great questions. Those are all the things I think nobody knows the answer to yet because it's so new. Uh, if you think about it, these skills are actually just like MCP servers, right?
Yeah.
This header up here, which basically just gives it a name and then describes what the skill is useful for. This is exactly like the metadata that you get about each of the endpoints in an MCP server. Um, like this is what this does, and this is when you would use it, and then the rest of this content is the contextual information that the LLM would only read if it decided that that description matched what it needed to do.
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
way, pretty similar to an MCP server where you only call the MCP endpoint if its endpoint description matches what you need. So pretty
Yeah.
similar, and like skills seems like kind of came along because people suddenly had way too many MCP servers in their LLM, and it couldn't hold all that stuff in context. And so we'll
Yeah.
see. Is this better, or is this just going to be the next thing that people aren't
Right.
cramming too much in context?
Yeah, and there are a lot of things evolving as we speak. People are offloading contextual, just trying to shrink the window, offloading things to subagents, and you could
Yes.
say that can be overused and get bloated because if you're just delegating and more and more and more. So I
Yeah.
think like there's no silver lining to any of this. Like use what works the best for you and your team.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And because it is evolving quickly, I would say try things and try new things all the time because it's very possible that what works best for your team this week in a couple months maybe not what will work best anymore. So just keep trying
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, time flies since we are having a good conversation here. We're already, 50 minutes in. So this was a great look at you building something out from scratch with AI,
Mhm.
and having something useful. But you also mentioned like there are things you're building into the software that you're shipping for clients where
Yeah.
the UX itself has some things. Like, can you provide some examples?
Yeah. Can you see that? All right.
Yep, I do.
So this is kind of a fun one. This is something we built internally. So obviously, I have to be a little careful about sharing things from clients. So I've got a couple examples here that are anonymized, and I've got a couple that are internal. But this is one that's more internal. So we use Slack a lot, and we also, even though we're kind of a Microsoft shop, we use Google Drive for all of our like shared documents instead of SharePoint or OneDrive. And we really found this need for a tool that could basically take all of our meeting transcripts, which is also something that we started doing semi recently. All of our meetings, strategic and client meetings, are now transcribed in Teams automatically, and we wrote a Azure function that wakes up every 15 minutes and goes to find new transcripts and copies them out to folders in the Google Drive as Markdown files based
Interesting.
on who has access to it. So different folder, we have different shares, based on what. whether you're in the leadership team or whether you're on this project team or that project team. So those transcripts are now like appearing out in Google Drive. But I don't know if you ever have this, Sam, but sometimes we'll have this thing where we're like, I remember somebody said something about this in the meeting, but I can't remember what they said or who said it.
Yeah.
And you find yourself like poking around in emails or Slack messages or whatever, trying to see if you can find any evidence. Also, standard operating procedures, like this is how we do this process at Trailhead. This is where you can find skills. This is where we're sharing skills as a team. Or when you create a new skill, make sure you put it here. All of that kind of stuff is in our Google Drive as well. So I created the thing that actually moves our transcripts out to the Google Drive, and then one of my teammates created this AI agent that runs in that I should say the interface runs in Slack, and then behind the scenes it runs in Azure. But it basically is using a a vector database to
Mm,
vectorize all of our documents. So whenever someone adds, updates, or deletes a document, it updates the vector database based on what you're allowed to see. And then you can go in and have this conversation. So here's an example where I'm just moving a meeting transcript for a fake client. And then I'm asking the AI a question in Slack, and it thinks about it for a second and it says, hey, before I provide that to you, what format do you want it in? And I tell it to use the executive summary, and then it answers the question. The budget is 34,000 plus some extra if necessary for this particular project.
wow, this is amazing.
And so
Because
this is
it's actually
super.
looking through, like you said, like it's looking through the transcripts of each of the
Uh-huh.
meetings and then finding this.
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
So this is it basically answering a question that's like, I know somebody mentioned a number, but now, I've been to 20 meetings since then and my brain is full of other numbers. What was that number that somebody mentioned? And I can ask it any kind of way. I could say, what's the budget for this project? Or I could say like somewhere in December, somebody mentioned a number for this client. What was that number? And because it's using vectorization, it can find the semantic meaning of what I'm asking about and go find
Mhm.
that in all of our meeting transcripts or our standard operating procedures or our wiki documentation, all of that stuff. So pretty powerful.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
you have more.
similarly,
Yeah.
yes, similarly for a client, we did something similar. They had a, a document database that they were using, and it was kind of grouped by category, and you could search for keywords. But if you've ever used a document database like that, you can never find what you're looking for that way. You might use one word and it uses a different word. You might be remembering it wrong the way it was described. And like if you don't use the exact right words, you can't find it. So we basically made a chat that you could use instead. So you could basically ask this assistant questions about the documents and right in the web interface. And it would come back and basically say, here's what I found. Here's an answer to your question. These are good things to eat right before you compete. And then like, here's where I'm finding that in the documents. And you can click right into those documents
Mhm.
instead of trying to find them by, keywords.
This is
So no,
fun.
yeah,
It's like
another value.
you're giving the users like a agent experience right inside of your apps, and it's
Yep,
very semantic aware.
exactly. Another good example that is semantic search. This is a client of ours that has a database of medicines and supplements. I don't know if you know any of the scientific names for medicine, Sam. I have a hard time remembering, and my wife is the RN in the family,
Uh,
so she's always in charge of this stuff, right? But Tylenol and acetaminophen, that's the same thing, right? Uh, NSAIDs, that's the category that
mhm.
ibuprofen and other things fall into. If you don't know the exact right thing to search in a medication database, it's really hard if you're not a scientist to find the right things or a doctor. So we created this application. It looks like I don't have the video of it here for you, but we created this application that basically searches based off of similar conceptual names. So if you search ibuprofen, it'll find, I'm sorry, if you search NSAID or ibuprofen, it'll find the Advil, in here
Hmm.
because they mean the same thing conceptually, even though they're not spelled or pronounced the same way. And
Yeah.
nobody had to go through and say these names are the same, and do that maintenance work in the database. It's just an LLM knowing that those words are similar to each other.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask you a question here? So
yeah,
when you're pulling off things like this,
yeah.
are you trying to separate out your transactional database and replicating things on a vector database, or is it all kind of together?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. That it depends is, of course, the correct engineering answer always, right?
Yeah.
It depends on the actual use case. In this case, the documents. Let me use this one. The documents that we looked at before. The documents were already in the database, and so we basically added some fields to them,
Mhm.
or added it was another table to the same database that had, because these documents, some of them are big, and so there's this concept in semantic search called chunking, where you
Mhm.
have to take a larger document and cut it up into pieces that overlap with each other, so that you can find the semantic meaning in all of the different chunks. So we had to do chunking with this. So basically, all of these documents have a related table that basically point back to the original document and say, I'm a chunk, I'm chunk number one, I'm chunk number two, I'm chunk number three for this document. And we're actually searching that chunk table for the semantic matches and then referencing back to its sort of like parent document.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it depends, like you're saying, like it depends on the doc, depends on the type of data,
Yep.
and how you're storing it.
Yeah. I've got a couple more if you have time.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go for it.
This is a insurance company that was interested in doing kind of like a quick categorization and valuation of different items that you might want
Mm.
to insure. So this is an example actually pulled from the application where we uploaded. This was a very expensive piece of jewelry that we don't own. We grabbed this from a picture on the internet, right? But this is like a $15,000-$20,000 piece of jewelry here, and basically it looks at the picture, it identifies what it sees, understands it using AI, and then it asks you questions about it to try and nail down more details. So I uploaded a picture of my smartwatch, for example, and it was like basically like, nice try, that looks like just a smartwatch. It looks like this brand, it looks like it might be this model, is that correct? And I said yes, and it said okay, it's only worth this much. We tried kind of fooling it in some of our testing and saying like, this piece of jewelry used to belong to George Washington, and it would be like, that piece of jewelry is a smartwatch, and that doesn't make sense.
Right.
So you're lying. And then it basically comes back with a valuation, and then lets the consumer continue the process to actually go do the more technical valuation that has to happen legally before
Mm.
you can
So
move on.
is that like image recognition, but with a lot of extra metadata?
Yeah. Yep. So it's image recognition followed by, plus a very specific prompt that's looking at
Mm.
very specific things about the items, followed by like a Q&A with the user to try and nail down more information. Like what else do you need to know, LLM, to be
Yeah.
able to do a good estimate for this?
Yeah. I
And what we
can
found
totally.
is it's
Yeah,
very,
sorry. Go
very
ahead.
accurate. So it saves a
Yeah.
lot of time if this person is like, yeah, I have no problem insuring it for that price. Um, it smooths the process out. They go straight into that application process, knowing exactly what range to expect.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet this is super useful because a lot of the times you're trying to figure out what's the value of the thing that you're trying to insure.
Exactly. Yeah. So here's an example of it basically saying, okay, I recognize that as a Daniel Wellington watch. What's the model number? And the person happens to know the model number and then the size, and they're kind of narrowing down what value it is based on its different characteristics.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're out of time, right? But
Yeah, but this
hopefully
is
that
this
was
is
useful.
amazing. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you are building so much of smartness in your apps itself, like for the end user experience. Because I mean, it's one thing for us to use AI, but I think the user expectations are also elevated these days with
Hmm.
AI, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so many of our clients are coming to us and saying our board or our executives are telling us it's time to add AI, and we don't really know what to add. And so we're helping them think through well, what would actually be useful as opposed to just AIifying. Like we've all used software that's been AIified for no particular reason and
Right.
had no particular use to the end user.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
helping clients understand that, I think, is a really important process. Like what's actually valuable that you could do.
Yeah, that's well said. Because like it's a favorite thing for CEOs to slap on like AI powered. Like, okay, why? And
Right.
what is the value? What is the purpose of what you're doing? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this whole ecosystem, like especially in the .NET space, has
Uh-huh.
evolved quite a bit. Like if you look around, like the UI part of this, it's well taken care of. Like all of the big players like Telerik and DevExpress and Infragistics and Syncfusion, like they all have smart UI. So like
Hmm.
this type of semantic searches for your grids,
Hmm.
data charts, visualization, it's all taken care of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice little comment here from the chat room. Hey, KG Bets, thank you for the comment. Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Good. Good. I'm
Yeah,
glad. I hope it's useful to people. It's been really fun learning all this stuff over the last few months and playing around with it. So I wanted to do this sample project so people could get a feel for what I'm doing and not have it be a secret, client project.
yeah, absolutely. All right, Jay. So I'm going to bring down your desktop here, but this has been amazing because like you are sharing what is real, like how you are building real systems. So for people who are maybe on the fence, like AI is just all hype. Are you actually really shipping software? Yes, we
Mhm.
are. We kind of all have to
Yep.
because otherwise like we fall behind. uh, yeah, so
Yeah.
this is nice to see your setup and how you're using it, and I think like the tools are good enough. Like choose whichever assistant or agent works for you,
Yep.
Copilot, Claude, Codex. I've heard great things about the Codex agentic models as well when it comes
Yes.
to coding. So
Yeah.
your experiences might vary, so choose what works for you. Yeah. Jay, things are evolving so fast. Like in the past, like we would ask, like, what are you looking forward to in the next 6 months? Like we don't even know like how much of this is going to evolve. But
True.
what are you excited about just in the next upcoming, let's just say a few weeks? Like, what
Yeah.
are some things you want to look into?
Yeah, so there's this really interesting thing that's going on right now, which is that you're going from what I just showed to swarms of agents that are
Mm,
working on things. Sometimes you can automate them in a way where there's an agent that's like a project manager that's in charge of them, or a product owner. I'm really interested in uh, seeing if that's useful or if that fundamentally breaks our brains too much to actually be useful, right? Because there is a limit to how much a human can multitask, and I think we're kind of at or above it already. And so, like, if the human wisdom and guardrails is an important part of the recipe, like, how much can you multitask with agents and not basically ruin that? That's kind of what I'm interested in learning in the coming months and weeks.
yeah, well said. And this is something everyone's trying to grapple with because like
Mhm.
when you look at the fancy things on social media, people are saying, "Hey, look, I spun up 5 agents and I went to bed, and it spun up my whole app and published it." I'm like, that's a lot of cognitive load for you to even like set it up so it can be completely autonomous and doing
Mhm.
all the things. Like you're spending days to even
Mhm.
set things up, and like how much are you needing to get done that you have so much of parallel work.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe some folks are doing it. I'm not there yet. I'm very a little
Me
bit
neither.
single threaded.
I still interrupt it probably 10% of the time and say, no, stop, you're doing the wrong thing. So I worry about those. And the other maybe 20% where I read what it did and say, oh, that's a good idea. I should look into how it did that to make sure it did it right.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
But
30% of the work I wouldn't even be looking at if I was sleeping, right?
right, right. But I think to your point, like, let's see how this evolves, because like
Hmm.
you're seeing, the Ralph Wiggum type loops with Cloud
Yeah.
Code. Microsoft and some of those folks have been playing around with something called Squad. There are agent teams that Claude is exploring. So I think everyone's exploring to see what are the exit conditions where we can be truly hands off, and
Yeah.
how much work does it take to really hand off something completely and not look at it, because you cannot look at five agents working together. It's just too much of a cognitive load. But
Yep.
can you be completely hands off on
Yeah.
certain tasks? So
Yeah. We'll see.
we'll see. We'll see. All right, Jay, this has been a fantastic conversation. I learned a whole lot. I'm always curious as we are evolving, like, what's your tool chain? What's your setup like? So thank you for sharing very real world things that you are
Yeah.
building, and then also very interesting things for your clients in the type of software that users expect. So
Of course.
I really appreciate your time. And yeah, chat room, for those of you watching live, thank you for hanging out with us. You have our social handles. We are, Jay and me are pretty much on all of the socials. So, X or Twitter or LinkedIn, Discord, GitHub, you name it, you can
Mhm.
find us. So let's keep the conversation going. But
Absolutely.
yeah, Jay, thank you so much for coming on, taking a precious hour of your day to come and hang out with me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Thanks for
Yeah.
joining everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, that's it from us. We'll see you in 2 weeks on another Pragmatic AI show. Until then, take care, be productive, and have fun. All right, bye.